Good to see you again.
Good to see you again, Joe.
Yeah, we were just hanging out a couple days ago, actually. So for the audience who, yeah, we're both speaking at Forward in data conference in Paris. What did you think of Forward?
It was very nice. I mean, I have to say there were two special things about it. One, it was a first for me anyway, because I never was in Paris before for a conference. That was number one. And the second one was I had this role of being a musical introducer for many of the speakers on the main stage, right? So in many ways, I was already very excited up front. But I have to say I was positively surprised additionally because the quality of talks and the speakers, they were really all awesome. I mean, there were a few talks that were in French that I didn't understand, but they seemed
Same.
nice, and the rest was really valuable.
Yeah, for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, for the audience, you were playing intro songs for everybody. So that was
Exactly.
I've never seen that before.
Yeah,
It was a nice intro. You had a piano, and you wrote the scores and the
exactly.
lyrics, and that was
Exactly. Yeah, that was very cool. I mean, it was. I also definitely have not seen a grand piano at a conference location before.
never.
So Joanne and I, we definitely took advantage of it, right? So we made the best we can out of that piano being there already. That was
Oh,
very
was it
nice.
all? So it was on the stage. It's like a
Yeah,
permanent
yeah.
addition to that stage. Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. So we knew that up front, and
Mm,
that's why we had the plan of using it as much as possible, and hence the plan of doing musical intros came together. Yeah.
that's super cool. I'm gonna have to try that at other conferences. I think maybe it'll just become like a tradition at every data
Oh, that would be
conference.
awesome.
So, yeah, that's awesome. For people who don't know who you are, do you want to give a quick intro?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Tiankai. I'm currently working as a data strategy and data governance lead at ThoughtWorks in Europe. I'm very passionate about the people side of data, especially when it comes to collaboration, communication, and creativity. I'm so passionate about it that I wrote a book about it called Humanizing Data Strategy,
It's right
which just
here.
released a few
Great
months
book.
ago. Yes, exactly. Very cool. And yeah, that is what I am all about these days. I'm also a father of two kids, 5 and 3, and I'm a passionate musician, as you have heard from the beginning of this conversation. So yeah, that's me.
That's cool. Yeah. What's your background in data? We'll kind of maybe start from the beginning here because the human side's interesting, but I want to kind of get the
Sure.
audience to know you as a person as well. What got you into
Yeah.
this racket?
Yeah. It actually all started when I chose my major in for my studies. And I was a big fan in my teenage years of advertisements, and I was good with computers. So I decided to basically do a mix of studying, which was focusing on marketing and on information systems, basically. And I did my bachelor's and master's in it. And when my studies and my master's was finished, it was exactly that time when marketing analytics was a thing. So I started in the field of marketing analytics, analyzing campaigns, web analytics, social analytics, all these kind of things.
Around what year
And
was
I
this?
did that for a while. 2012.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so I worked for a few years in China, and that was very special because in China, as we all know, data privacy is not that big of a topic. It's actually much scarier to have access to all of the data that is available. So doing marketing analytics with consumer behavior data was really exciting there. And then I came back to Germany, did a few years at the headquarters of the agency I was at called TD Reply. And then one of my clients was Adidas. That project went so well that they asked me if I wanted to join the internal side of Adidas. So I spent
Nice.
6 years there. And within my years at Adidas, I switched from the analytics side to the data governance, data management side of it all. And I found a passion for seeing the bigger picture, let's say, right? The strategic side of data to see how data actually flows end to end. What are not only the analytical sides of data, but also the operational sides of data, etc. And yeah, I've been there ever since. And since last year, I've joined ThoughtWorks as a consultant, where I'm already very happy to have impacted more organizations by working with different clients. Yeah.
Interesting. What's been the move from working in industry, quote unquote, to joining consulting?
hmm Um, I think the switch that is probably on top of everyone's mind is that work-life balance is a little bit different, right? Because as a consultant, obviously you're paying a lot more attention to making clients happy, but also being billable, as to say, right? So
Mm,
it's all about spending time, valuable time with a client and actually delivering value to them. But connected to that, I actually found a really big advantage to it compared to corporate because when you work in consulting on a project with a client, they already made the choice to invest in it, right? They already made the choice to pay money for something they need. So all that creating awareness and getting buy-in that I had to do inside the corporation was not needed anymore because I already had stakeholders that really wanted to work with me and wanted to listen to what I had to say. So that has been really nice to just not face the resistance that much, but rather
Mm.
directly work with stakeholders that want to change things on topics.
What
Exactly.
kinds of resistance
Yeah.
would you see in your past jobs?
Yeah, I mean, the typical thing is nobody understands what data governance is, right? Why is it even important? Why should I invest in it? Things are going well already, and that's a very siloed view on things, right? And nobody wants to basically um, decode with you what data governance actually is all about, and even giving you the opportunity to explain, right? So you have to
Mm.
be very proactive in even getting the right awareness and then having a chance to explain what it's all about to even get the buy-in. Otherwise, everybody's just like, I don't care, I don't know, I don't want to deal with it, right? That's a lot of the resistance.
Yeah, it happens a lot. It happens a
Mm.
lot. And it feels like this is sort of yeah, I don't know about one of the cornerstones of your book, right? But I think it's
Hmm.
the people part of it is definitely something that's very important. And yeah, you're right. I mean, things like governance, even things like data, right? I mean, depending on the type of company you're at, um,
Sure.
it's like why do we even need to invest in this stuff at all? We're doing just fine.
Right.
So it's hard. It's hard, right? But yeah, like you're saying consulting, it's like they've already kind of pre-qualified themselves. So they reached out and obviously are paying you presumably good money. So
Sure, yes.
it's awesome. So why'd you write a book?
Why did I write a book? Well, I mean, the practical side of the story is last year I had the opportunity to translate a book, Laura Madsen's book, Disrupting Data Governance.
Oh
I
yeah.
had translated that from English to German for the German-speaking community here, and that went really well. So it was a really nice collaboration. And the publisher, Technics Publications, was part of it. They liked the collaboration so much that they basically asked if I wanted to write my own book end of last year. And I
Nice.
hadn't considered writing a book until that point. But when a publisher asks if I want to write your own book, then I said, this is an opportunity that I don't know if I will ever have again. So I probably should say yes. So I came up with that outline of what I would want to write about. I realized that many of my talks and my content before was focusing on the people side of data. So why not create it as basically a more monography of things that all my thoughts consolidated together. And yeah, so this is kind of how I did it. And the topic, as I mentioned, I was passionate about it already for years before. It was more about bringing it down to paper. And yeah, just basically writing it down all at once. Yeah.
Yeah, walk us through the process of um, getting uh the inquiry to write a book to deciding on the topic. I think this is one of these things where I was talking to somebody that actually, yeah, talking to somebody this morning about writing a book. I think
Hmm.
topic discovery is an interesting one, right? I mean, maybe dive a
Right.
bit deeper into that. Like how did you decide on this specific thing?
Yes, that's a good point. I think, I mean, next to my personal motivation that I would want to write about it because I feel like I know a lot about that topic. The other side of it is also just checking a little bit for the gaps in the market, right? The people side of data is, I think, a topic that is very much agreed upon as an important one in the data community, but I always felt like there was not a lot of practical literature about it if you
Mm,
compare to the more technical literature in the data space, right? And I mean, there are really good ones. I think like Bob Steiner or like Tom Redman and all those that wrote a lot about it already. But I always feel like that we are ones of the few to actually write about it, and that deserves more attention for something that is so critical and we all know can be a make or break for any data initiative. Why isn't there anything more? So that's why I decided to put my own spin on it. And I think I was very conscious about my writing style too, because it's not really a long book, right? It feels more like short chapters with short sub chapters
yeah.
with like really small but poignant kind of inputs with examples. And I always kept in my mind it's for busy people, but not because not everyone has actually the time to read a really long book. So I want to make
Yeah.
sure that people can put it on their bag and get on a plane and read a few things on it during their commute or something. And I wanted to write it also by being personal and in my own style with using some humor and my own personal
Right.
stories about it. So that's how it all came together. So that in my head at least made sense to be unique and that it didn't exist exactly that way before. Yeah.
Why do you think it is that most of the books focus on technology when I think if you've been in
Mhm.
the industry long enough and you've seen things, you realize technology is probably the least of your concerns in most
Right.
situations, right?
Yeah. It's a really good point. I think the link between data and tech has always been stronger than data and business, right? And I think a lot of people talk about that anyway, that data is more than just tech. It should be actually a business topic. But that change of mindset happened not so long ago, I feel like, right? Because it started very much from technology and big data and all these even vendors driving the conversation for a long time. And now all of a sudden it came up, and now the more technology agnostic conversation is starting to happen. It is more about business relevance, architectural thinking, product thinking, and all these kind of
Mm,
things now put a bridge to the business world actually more. And yeah, this is why not many people have written about it yet, I would say. Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, I'm seeing the same thing. But you go on LinkedIn and it's an interesting echo chamber there because there's a lot of discussions
Hmm.
about we need to put people first in data and all this kind of stuff. But it's also like super hard as you were talking about earlier, where just the recognition of uh, data is sometimes yeah, it could be better. Um,
Yes.
but but you're talking about humanizing data strategy. So
Hmm.
first thing is what is a data strategy?
Yeah. So it's funny thing. Of course, while writing a book, I did some research and
Yeah,
I wanted to make sure I have the right definition of data strategy. But there doesn't seem to be an agreement on what a data strategy actually is.
yeah,
But I knew that some things I fully agreed with, right? That it's linked to business objectives and should be oriented by business value and not anything else. That it's about people, process, and technology altogether, right? And that it's about also putting basically meaning behind it and making it in a secure way. So, in my point of view, I came up with that definition. It's a long-term plan to make sure that people, process, and technology are intentionally driving value through basically doing things secure, meaningful, and in a value-oriented way. That's kind of my definition of it. And for me, it implies three things, right? One is that people processing technology is all part of it, but also it's about the whole data lifecycle, right? It's everyone who creates data, everyone who is processing data, and everyone who's using data. So it's not only focusing on the downstream side of analytics, but actually far beyond that too.
right.
It's also about agreeing actually on what meaningful and valuable actually means, because there might be different perceptions of it. So, a really human thing of just having different opinions, but it's important to bring people together on defining what that means. And lastly, also that, yeah, it's basically about taking actions together, right? That whole, not only that it's a plan and an artifact that stands there, but that is finally also actionable and that everyone can get along to drive value with data. That's kind of the idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good point. I like your point too about how our differing opinions often lead us to evaluate things like value differently.
Hmm.
The word value is thrown around so much in the
Yeah.
data industry. It's almost become a meme. I feel like,
Oh, yeah.
you know what I mean?
Good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking of the who Dr. Evil, a meme where he does the quotation marks. The
Business value.
value. Yeah, exactly.
No, it's true. I mean, and you know, uh I can't remember the name of it. The Art of Business Value, I think it was. I can't
Hmm.
remember the author, but it was a really good book. But it basically, the punchline of it was, you know, just the spoiler was, it's all in the eye of the beholder. There is no definition because I think that we try and go about it quantitatively, and if you take this route, it's actually harder than it seems, right? As this author points
Absolutely.
out, like ROI. Okay, great. Let's walk through how you're going to calculate ROI. Let's walk through
Hmm.
on what time scale you're going to evaluate ROI. If business value is shareholder value, um, that's typically a quarter, at least in the United States. It's 3 months, right? Is that enough time for a data project to really show value? You and I would
Absolutely.
probably
Yeah.
say that it's probably not enough time. You need to give it some time. Would you,
Absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah.
would you say that your data project um, shows provable value in 3 months from start to finish? I mean, that's it's hard. right? Or might be
I guess
easy. Depends what it is.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I think it depends on the size of the project, right? If it's
Yeah,
really just a small tweak of a data set and adding an attribute and that is counting as an initiative, then sure, 3 months is probably enough. And if that attribute leads to a small productivity increase, then even better, right? You have your business case a little bit there. But the bigger it gets, the more complicated it gets. And then 3 months is definitely not enough. You're absolutely
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I think with value though, I mean, and I write about that in the book too, right? No matter how you do a quantified business case, it's never gonna be perfect, right? There's always gonna be
Mm,
some holes in there that you can pick, and you can say, well, did you consider this? Or that doesn't actually make sense. We should actually consider this, and it's never gonna be perfect. But also, it only addresses, I would say, the rational side of people, right? If you really want to
yeah,
motivate people, talking about them with this big north star to say we're gonna increase our revenue or save our cost by 20%, everyone will nod their heads, but they're not really passionate about it, most likely, right? It's one of these
yeah,
bigger organizational goals that you're doing. So value has a meaning of personal value too, right? What does it mean for me personally to do it? And that would mean, for example, that if people have to spend less time manually cleaning data, or someone can experience the joy of experimenting and trying out new things, this is what people would actually value because they, as a person, really want it. And this is why I would say if you want to define value, you can always take the rational approach and say, this is my story for everyone. But for different audiences, you might want to break it down to personal value for specific audiences, right? Talking to a data scientist about value personally can be different than a business person, can
yeah,
be different than a tech person, et cetera, et cetera. So we should be more flexible also in using the right definition of value for different audiences to make sure it actually lands as
for
a
sure.
communication. Yeah.
Absolutely. So in your book, you talk about the five C's. In fact, the book
Hmm.
is the five C's. It's hard to tell like
Exactly.
that.
Yes.
So what are they?
Yeah. So they are competence, collaboration, creativity, communication, and conscience. The reason why I call them five Ps is purely because it's catchy and it's good to remember, I think. I mean,
Makes sense.
that's very clear. But they also really mean something to me, right? I think competence really, as the name says, is all about the right skill set, right? And being able to do things. And that means both data literacy from the non-data professionals, but also business acumen from the data professionals, and also the difference being a practitioner and being a leader because it's a different skill set that you need. And I think in the data space specifically, we kind of underestimate how much leadership skills are actually needed. Just
Mm.
because you're a good developer doesn't make you a good leader immediately, right? So
Oh
that is
yeah,
something to pay attention to. Yeah.
that's a big one.
Um, exactly. Then we have, of course, collaboration. That's all about having shared goals, co-creating things, and not just basically working on silos, but also what can lead there to have that shared mindset more and be a bit better in collaboration and seeing that actually it takes the whole organization to take data seriously and not just one central data team to do it, right? Then we have communication as well. That's more about, as we just talked about, how to actually use the right narrative for the right audiences to talk about data and in what kind of way you should do it to different stakeholders. Creativity is, let's say, the human underlying factor of innovation because every innovation starts with good ideas. So we should actually address human creativity and encourage that. And lastly, conscious is about more the human judgment, the critical thinking, and how we can actually apply it to governance in a more cross-functional way to make sure we're doing the right things as well and that we're not doing anything bad for society, let's say. Yeah.
Right, makes sense.
Yeah.
So if I'm using this 5C framework in my company, uh, how do I go about using it with my team or with my stakeholders or my leaders?
Yeah. I think the easiest way probably is by just checking how you see yourself doing in these five C's. I have
Mm,
at the end of my book also like a questionnaire, right? So to make it really actionable. So these questions are addressed to anyone who works in a data team or in a data strategy, and you can check against the questions if the answer is yes or no. And if you have a lot more no's than yeses in any of the five C's, that might be a good starting point to do better, right? And you might realize that this is maybe one of the five C's that causes a lot of issues. You just haven't seen it as an issue yet. And now it's time to actually address it. And it's going beyond just tools, right? And you should actually start taking some actions to address the human factor more. And yeah, all of those five C's, of course, are related to each other anyway, right? So I think by just addressing one C, you might tackle other C's anyway. So over time, it becomes kind of a collaborative effort to be better in all five of those. Yeah.
Is there a suggestion how you would balance each of these C's? Are they equally weighted, like 20% each, or how do you evaluate these
Yeah.
criteria?
It's a very interesting question. I actually have heard that a few times. Um, I actually have not positioned the five C's as a measurement framework ever, right? It was
Right.
much more of a framework to find the gaps and to address them in the right way. And I always position it as more as a root cause analysis
Mm.
tool and not as a measurement framework. And that's probably how it should be. I feel very weird about measuring the human side of data with KPIs, like with the five
Yeah.
C's. It feels like it's a little bit counter and anti what the message of the book even is about.
Yeah.
Because it's really not that easy to just say, I'm doing very well in this C, so I'm done now, right? I don't have to focus on it anymore.
Right, but people are
So,
going to do it that way.
oh, true.
Yeah, I mean that's the nature
Right.
of it. Like, we're data driven. We have to measure everything, right? And it's
Right.
and it's the old Drucker
Right.
thing. Like what gets measured is what gets managed. And so, it's
True.
yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I would say all the five C's are equally important. Yes. I would just not say 20% or something, but if you can not ignore one of those and try to be paying attention to all five, that would be nice. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I can't see a situation where like collaboration works without communication, right? Like that.
Yeah, that is true. Correct.
That would seem very. I'm trying to think of how that would work. While you're talking, maybe I'll ask ChatGPT what it
Through a
thinks.
tick, yeah, through a ticketing system, you can be really efficient in your collaboration, but not do any communication, I would say, for example.
But on the
Yeah.
ticket's communication though, of being like a well-written ticket.
Right. Okay. Yeah, if you say that you could even see tickets as a way of a language, right? I talk to you through tickets, basically.
I mean,
Sure.
that's some
Yeah.
companies, right? If you're async, I mean, I think a lot of uh, companies like and I've seen this happen where some companies like yeah, we'll keep things over email. We
Hmm.
minimize Slack, minimize calls. We'll just do things asynchronously, almost to an extreme, right? But I mean, I'm asking ChatGPT, is there a way to collaborate without communicating? Uh,
Yeah. What's the answer?
it says it's indeed possible without direct communication. That's like the caveat. It doesn't say like
Ah,
just think anytime you're collaborating or communicating something. But yeah, it's basically what you kind of described, right? You could use a project management system, a version control system, collaborative docs, um, Kanban. But again, it's yeah, I don't think you can get away with it. No, it's possible.
yeah,
So,
true. I'm thinking who would otherwise, beyond this podcast, ask a question. It might be like people that are really introverted, but are put in a project management position, and they need to figure out how to minimize communication, but still run the project efficiently, right? So
oh, I've
that
worked
might
with
be a question.
I've worked with devs like that before. Like one dev I knew, he literally had basically blinders at his desk
Wow.
and kind of surrounding him so nobody could talk to him. So that's
Wow.
I
That
think
was
he was
before home office days, I suppose, right?
no
Because if you're working from home, then you don't need to have blinders anymore.
no
But
this was back in like 2015 I think so it was
got it.
pre-remote days but yeah that was a bit extreme but I think he was a bit on the spectrum where that's the only way he
Got
could
it.
work is if anyone even talked to him he would just like freak out so just nobody talked to him ever. Brilliant
Got it.
developer, but yeah, so that was interesting. But again, it's good. It's the human side, right? Like you have to,
Absolutely.
take some person's brilliance also with,
Hmm.
is some of the stuff that they need. But
Yeah,
everyone, I think it's
absolutely.
when I think about the five C's, it's interesting because I think it's people are definitely a blend of all these things, right? You could have high
Hmm.
competence, low communication, low collaboration, that and vice versa. You could have very low competence, be very good at communicating. So,
Absolutely. Actually, in the competence chapter, I also talk about partnering up with HR more, and
mm,
more from a learning and development, but also from a career path point of view, right? Because if we want to give practitioners and experts also career path, then we need to intentionally do it, right? Because the classic path in big organizations is a practitioner and then leader and then even more senior leader, right? And you are
Right.
a people manager by default. But especially in the data space, not everyone is like that. And if we want to make sure they are continue to growing and they actually are feeling fulfilled, then we need expert career paths too, where it's not about people management, but just having more seniority from a different point of view. So yeah, I mean, the partnering with HR, I feel like is the only way to do it better, and yeah, that should be considered as well.
Oh,
Mhm.
Canada. I mean, I've been on the record as saying that, up to 90% of people who are in management positions should not be managers, like at all. They haven't
Yes.
been trained, right?
Mhm.
Just because you're good at your job, all of a sudden, let's put you in a management position where now you're responsible for, the work of a bunch of other people. It's a classic. What got you here is not going to get you there. You could be a
Correct.
brilliant, competent technician, and be an utter dolt at working with people. And I've seen this time and time. I'm sure you've seen it too. You have that look on your face, like, yeah, reminds me of a lot of
Absolutely.
people. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
but why is it that organizations don't? I mean, why is it that we stick to the sort of the traditional path, right? Is it? I was thinking about this the other day. Somebody brought on LinkedIn about the maybe it's Mark Benioff who was saying that he's trying to do away with a lot of layers of admin and give individual contributors, like people who are doing the actual work, building
Hmm.
stuff, more power. And I think that was a bit of an enlightened view because I think we've had this hierarchical model for a very long time. It kind of goes back to the industrial age where it's, upper management, leadership, and then all the worker bees down here who it's almost like they're thought of as lesser citizens, even though they're the ones who are actually doing the real work. So
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a really good question. I would maybe actually look at it from a human side too, as in
mm,
how we define success at work generally for us as individuals,
yeah,
right? And I feel like the very traditional view is the more people report to you, the more successful you are in your job, right? But that is not necessarily true, very simply said, because having more people report to you doesn't mean you have more impact or you're having a better influence on the success of a business. But that has only probably changed over the last decade or so, that this is being more seen that way. But a lot of people are stuck in the old mindset, right? The more people I control, the better and the more popular I am, and the more I can prove that I'm a successful professional and I can
yeah,
define my life's value on it, even, right? So, but that needs to change and it's starting to change. It's more that corporate organizations need to probably adjust to it a little bit
yeah.
and yeah, have a different way of looking at rewards and promotions and organizational models.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, because I know a lot of people who they put a lot of their self-worth in their title, right? If I get a C-suite
Yes,
title, that's who I am. That's my identity. Then but
exactly.
what you find too is at the top it gets really lonely, and you're with the other people who are in the same boat typically, and sometimes it's a great dynamic. Other times people are just trying to get ahead, and that's I think you know what happens there. So, and the lifespan of a lot of C levels, I mean, it's well, not the lifespan, the tenure at a company
Yeah.
of a C level,
Oh my
it's
God, lifespan was a bit scary, but
their
yeah.
lifespan. They don't last long. It's like Squid Game. So
Oh God.
yeah,
Yeah, no, absolutely right. And I mean, that created another phenomenon, which is the inflation of senior titles, right? Where
yeah,
all of a sudden you have like hundreds of VPs in an organization and loads of C-level title that report to other C-level people. And all of that just to make the people happy and they can use their titles, although their span of influence is not actually increased that much compared to other organizations, right? So I think a bunch of things have derived from there that are not really great from that kind of phenomenon.
What do you think about the chief data officer title?
Yeah. I think in principle, and that's my visual thinking, it is a great thing that if you actually do have someone representing the data side on a C level and be part of the executive board, then that would be really nice because an organization is treating data as a serious asset and it's actually being decided with and upon in the right way. But in reality, and we just talked about the inflation of titles, right? It's not actually actioned that way, right? Many of the chief data officers report to another C level, right? Or they are just a glorified head of data with like middle management even, and they are just by a title called chief data officer. And that doesn't make them part of the senior leadership, right? That's just a title that doesn't mean a lot. And that is unfortunately starting to happen more and more, I feel like.
Mm,
So yeah, there needs to be somehow more of a balance. I
yeah.
have, and maybe I don't know if you've seen it the same way, but even um, I feel like the number of open chief data officer roles has not actually increased that much. It feels like it's going slower again.
Hmm.
And I see more head of datas again and like more like directors, senior directors of data rather than chief data officers. I think it's hopefully because of the community actually giving that feedback that doesn't make any sense if you don't actually treat it as a C-level role. And that it's now being a little bit reduced again to the
For
proper
sure.
seniority.
I think I'm seeing the
Yeah.
same thing too. And the reality is, when you're talking about enterprises that maybe promote
Yeah.
somebody to a chief data officer role, data is often held by other departments, right? Chief information officer,
Hmm.
for example,
Right.
CTOs, CFOs, and so forth. So then the chief data officer comes in. Now it's a contest of, okay, so like I'm the data person, so I need to take responsibility for your data. And um, you know, I'm sure you can imagine this goes probably a couple directions. Either, yes, let's do
Hmm.
that, or over my cold dead hands, you're going to get the data out because this is
Right.
my kingdom, and I just need to wait you out until because the tenure for a
Right.
chief data officer is what, like 18 months, 2 years?
Yeah, yeah. It's very short, huh? Mm.
Yeah, I mean it is interesting, but I saw when I talk to data people about roles and moving up, it's interesting because where do you go if the chief data officer is sort of the pinnacle role or head of
Hmm.
data, whatever? What's is that an attractive progression, or maybe do you want to do something else the other time? I mean,
Right.
it's interesting.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. I feel like actually, now that we talk about it, there's another angle to it, which is transferable skills, right?
yeah,
Because you always see these senior leaders that jump from the finance department to, let's say, the marketing department. And it
right.
always talks about they have great product management, program management skills, and they know how to lead a team to with drive and everything. But why are we not talking about it the same way with chief data officers, right? If they actually
Mm,
can do it that way, then they might as well be chief sales officers or chief operating officers. There's a very similar kind of skill set needed on that level, right? But that only indicates that data is still treated as a second grade citizen, right? It's not actually on the same level as the other departments with the C level. It's still a lesser one, and it's still being probably put in the same bucket as tech. And then, yeah, you're only good with tech. You're not good actually with business departments, right? So yeah, I think that leads actually and shows a bit much bigger problem too, that people don't see transferable skills in the data space to other areas too.
that is
Mm.
interesting. But you mentioned things like marketing, and I would think marketing is very data driven, right? And
Should be, huh?
I
Yeah.
mean, I would hope so. So,
Yes. That is true. Yeah.
yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you wrote this book though, because it feels like it's even the cover is like a breath of fresh air, right? I look at it,
Yeah.
I'm happy. You're on the back, you're happy. Um, so it is interesting.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah,
Yeah.
are you gonna write another book, do you think?
Not yet. I think writing this one book already cost me a lot of energy and a lot of nights and weekends to do. Doing this next to having a family and a full-time job is really hard, I would say, right? I'm
Yeah.
glad that I did it, but right now I don't really feel, I would say, ready to write another one yet. But depends on how my career goes and everything, and I might have another topic that I really want to write about, and there's always that possibility. I mean, and because wasn't sure right from starting writing the book, I wasn't sure if I ever gonna write a second one. I said to
Mm,
myself, I'm gonna make this the most perfect book from my own standard as possible. So even selecting the cover, which I would say is a bit more different than all the other data books out there, right? To say
hmm.
I'm gonna go for a very um like flavorful color because it reflects my personality more. I'm
Yeah.
just gonna go for it no matter what everyone says. And even my writing style, right? And putting jokes in and being a bit more conversational rather than being really academic about my writing. All of those were choices because I wanted to make it count, right? So no matter if I'm gonna write a second book or not, I'm gonna be really happy about this first one and this only one maybe that I have written.
I think it's got how you got to approach it though. I mean, like I tell people, get a lot of questions about writing books, and I tell them, it's you got to take this seriously. It's very permanent once it's out, right?
Right.
Like I always joke, it's more permanent than a face tattoo. Like you can get tattoos removed. Once the
Right.
book is out, it's out. So
So true.
unless
Wow. Yeah, that's a great analogy, actually. When you just finished writing Fundamentals of Data Engineering, did you immediately feel the urge and the motivation to write a second one, or did it take time for you?
it's funny because I wrote in the acknowledgments, pass it to my family that this will be the last book I ever write.
Yeah.
And at the time, right, it was stressful because we were running a company, growing a company. I was remodeling my house, so we were literally living in the basement of my house, like cooking off an air fryer
Oh my
and
God.
like a microwave for like close to a year, actually. So most of the book was
Oh,
written
wow.
in those kind of like, you know, very dire circumstances, construction zone, the whole nine yards, right? And then,
Hmm.
so I'd actually go to the climbing gym often and right from there because they had a nice cafe and I could go climb and take breaks. And that was kind of where Matt Housley and I had our office, quote unquote, is
Hmm.
this kind of co-working space that this climbing gym has. Very great place, the front climbing club. But so that's where I wrote the first book, right? And it was very stressful.
Right.
And I put a lot of pressure on Matt and me, because I was like, if we're gonna do this, it has to be good. And I think, but it was stressful because I think several months before the book was supposed to come out, it was already number one new release on Amazon in several categories, and so that
Wow.
puts a lot of pressure on an already kind of pressure cooker situation. I'm a kind of guy. I mean, I put a ton of pressure on myself, right? Like it's
Right.
probably to a very unhealthy degree. So when the book was out, I think I took about a month off, and I was like, I want to work on another book. I'm not sure what yet. And so,
Wow. Okay.
and then started on another
Excellent.
book, right? And then, then a couple things happened, like ChatGPT happened. I was like, okay, so what's this going to do to publishing, right? Like, how do we use this? And
Right.
that took about six
Hmm.
months off from writing. I was just on that. And then, worked on this course with deep learning AI, and that took a lot of time. So, I feel
Right.
like just since September, I'm finally back to the book in an earnest way. But yeah, I didn't think I'd. For there was about a month I thought that probably not going to do another book. But then you get the itch, right? It's like you're probably the same way. You just have ideas that percolate in your head. You're kind of like, that's interesting, and also you have the confidence now where you can write a book, right? You did it
That is true.
and you got it published.
Yes.
So it's not this unknown thing. Like when Steve Hoberman probably approached you, I'm guessing about,
Yeah,
do you
yeah,
want to write for
exactly.
Techniques? And you're like, well, am I worthy to write a book? Is that what I'm gonna
Oh, I
do?
absolutely feel that way. Yes,
Yeah, you
exactly
probably
that.
had imposter
Yeah,
syndrome or something, or just insecurities about
very
it. Like,
much.
who am I to write a book? Right? That's how I felt. I was like,
Absolutely.
I'm just some dork in Utah writing a book on data engineering. You know,
Right.
why am I supposed? And Matt and I kind of asked ourselves, like, why are we the ones writing this? Why hasn't this been done? But then you realize, nobody's going to do it. You're the one that's going to do it, right? And so for your book, it's like
Exactly.
you're the guy who has to write this, and that's and then you wrote it, so you can write another
Yeah, very
one.
true. Absolutely. Actually, that maybe gives me the right motivation because I'm realizing based on what you said, that my anxiety levels would be much lower when I write the next one. That might actually make me much more productive anyway. So it might be actually a much more enjoyable process next time when I write a book than this time.
Well, the thing is, you can write the
Yeah,
book while you're just without getting a publishing deal. I mean, you can just keep writing and writing and writing, and pretty soon he's
that is
like,
true.
most of the book's already there. Let's find if we want to go publish it.
Yeah.
Let's do it, or just turn in Substack posts. I don't know, but see,
Yeah.
but the thing is, I think a lot of people have really good ideas, right? But a lot of
Hmm.
people internalize those ideas and don't get them out. And then
Right.
what's the point, right? Like it's great you think about things all day, but like who's gonna know about it? So
Absolutely. Right. And I think a lot of the efforts of putting it down in the right way and making it actually succinct for people to remember it and that it's understood by everyone is a talent that not everyone has, right? And if we release books and people actually enjoy reading those books, that actually proves that we have that talent that not everyone has. And it feels like almost a responsibility then to be the conduit for a lot of the things out there to put it in the right way
yeah,
that I can process it and learn from it. So,
oh for
yeah, I see
sure.
that also as a big opportunity for sure. Hmm.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're talented at describing things and writing it down in a way that's. And I was writing about this. I'm working on an article right now that I'm going to post, and it's, um, so you're not a practitioner anymore, quote unquote, because it's a question I often get, right, when I'm out talking to people that are like, well, but you're not doing a consultancy anymore. Like, are you scared of writing books but not being a practitioner? And I'm like, not really. I mean, I don't think you understand how hard it is to write a good book. Like I would say that's actually harder than being a practitioner in a lot of ways because, when you're at a job, right, you know how it is. Like you're focusing on the use case for the company, and it's a very, you're going deep, but it's a very narrow view, right? When you're trying to
Absolutely.
write, you're trying to figure out, okay, so like this is going to be for quite a few people. How do you write in such a way that one, people can understand what it is you're trying to write about, um,
Hmm.
and what your point is, and then two, um, how do you write this in a way that's not just talking about your very narrow experience, but people can generalize to their own
Absolutely.
situation? This is very difficult. Like I don't think people
Absolutely.
understand how hard this is.
Yes. Plus, I think because I had been worried in the past about not having enough inspiration to come up with content, right? And to
Mm.
write about if I'm not a practitioner anymore. But there are other ways to get inspiration now too, right? You can be very well connected. You just follow the industry, you talk to the community more. You will always get more input
Oh
that
yeah.
makes you think and connect the dots in different ways. So it doesn't have to all rely on being a practitioner anymore, right? You can also keep a practitioner mindset, but be a connector, be a translator, be a summarizer, whatever, right? And channel your energy that way. So I think you're absolutely right. It's a different skill set being good at being practicing and being then a good communicator and writing as
Oh,
well.
for sure. And I was
Yeah,
thinking
for
about this on
sure.
the walk right before or before we got on to record the podcast. But it was like there's an interesting thing too, uh, where it's almost better if you're not a practitioner at a company in some sense, and you're out there talking to people. And I
Right.
think and it occurred to me that if you or I just like stop being practitioner probably for the next 10 years actually, and just wrote about
Hmm.
things, it's not like problems like what you wrote about change. Well, it's not like it'll just be
Yeah,
solved
sure.
magically. Like you could basically stop like everything right today as an industry.
Right.
And I think even just solving the human part of data strategy, that's a 10-year project or more
Absolutely.
actually. And
Hmm.
by going out and talking to people, getting feedback, like I think that's how you solve these problems. But trying to, I think, narrowly focus on your specific company's use case and trying to generalize that to the rest of the world, I don't think that actually works. It's too it's too myopic, right?
That is
So
true. That's very true. Plus, with the human side of things, it probably takes anyway a whole generation to actually change your values completely, right? And there's a
yeah.
lot about the underlying aspect of how you're being educated, how you're being growing up, and what you experience, and that might take a whole generation to change the experiences to shape people in a different way, right, than before. So, yeah, it might take even longer. But you're right. I think many of the topics, right? Um, that was one of the things also how long would my book hold up when I release it? Might it be already outdated because ChatGPT is taking over the world? But in reality, of course, we all know that is not the case. Actually, it's now being rolled back a little bit on these AI things,
Yep.
and everybody's a bit more cautious about it anyway. And we all go back to the foundations more, which is really nice. So yeah, I'm glad that it stays relevant. And yeah, may we all write more things that stay relevant and get used more, right? So that's really cool.
Yeah, Lord willing. That's that's right. But I look forward to your next book. It'll be
Thank you.
amazing. No pressure. Well, it's been good chatting with you, man. Yeah, I hope to see you somewhere in the world again. So
Absolutely.
we'll just see
Yeah.
you on the great world of LinkedIn. But
Yeah. I keep being invited to Texas Data Day, so I may make it at some point. But that might be a location where we can meet each other again, if
are you
that's
gonna
still on
go
your
in
priority list.
2025?
I will try. I cannot promise yet, but I will try.
I
Yeah.
think you should go. It's my favorite conference
Okay.
in the US. Um,
Awesome.
yeah, like I was just talking to
That's high praise,
Ole
sir. Okay.
Olsen. Yeah, I mean it's good. It's only one day, but it's sort of like you just have the entire there's kind of a who's who of people that you like, right? Um, maybe there's people you don't
Awesome.
like. I don't know, but it's just it's a very
Yeah.
supportive community. It's a very it's a, and I always joke it's like a party that masquerades as a conference. So like
Love it.
you'd
I
have a lot of
love what
fun
I'm
there.
hearing. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
So you should show up.
Sounds
So
good.
I'll see you there as well. Just kidding.
Okay. No, no pressure.
No
I'm
pressure.
getting a lot of requests from Joe Rice today, so what I should do.
Books.
Let's see what
Go
happens.
to America. Yeah, no pressure. So
Yeah, exactly.
awesome, man.
Cool.
Well, good. I guess for people who want to find out more about you, how can they find you?
Yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn for sure. I also have my YouTube channel with a lot of the data songs that I'm doing. So if
Nice.
people want to check out that.
Brilliant.
And of course, my book is on Amazon, on the Technics Publications website, and everywhere locally where you might get books that you can order online. So yeah, I'm happy about anyone who reads it or just reaching out and interact with me.
Yeah, congrats. Also best-selling book, by the way. So congrats on that. That's awesome.
Yes.
So it's a
Thank
big
you so
step.
much.
Yeah. All
Yes.
right. Talk to you later, man.
All right. Talk to you later.